Maybe let's start from there by becoming a senior engineering leader. What do you think a role of a senior engineering leader should be? What's the responsibilities or what are unique about being a senior engineering leader?
That's a great question. So I don't like that word, but as you rise up the ladder, rise up the positions, a couple of things happen here. So one is the responsibilities increase, the breadth increases. So when I say breadth increases, I mean, now your scope actually becomes larger. One thing that also increases is the ambiguity in the expectations from your role increases. So now you do not know very clearly what is expected of you. To give an example, there is this phrase when you start your career, initial few years, when you're a software engineer or senior software engineer, you are told what to do and you're also told how to do and you have to go and do it. As you go further, maybe senior software engineer to principal engineer and so on, now you're told what to do, but not told how to do. You need to figure that out. But as you go further, I think you're not told even what to do and how to do. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out what to do and how to do. So that is what happens here. But for senior engineering leadership roles, there are a bunch of things that are very common. As you move into a managerial ladder, particularly, I'll talk for that at first. One thing is a given, right? So you will be spending a significant part of your time in the people management, managing people. Yes, it can change based on the organization size. For example, if it's a small startup, less than 10 people, you as a CTO will also be bearing a certain responsibility of writing code, et cetera, et cetera. But when the startup actually goes beyond a certain size, for example, it's a 300 people startup, you will rarely do so. But people management remains true even for a smaller startup. When I say people management, what do you mean by that? I mean, for example, hiring or even like before hiring, writing the job description and looking for people, partnering with your recruitment team, ensuring healthy pipeline, hiring those people, onboarding them, building the processes for onboarding, growing, providing a clear career path for each of them, coaching them, mentoring them, and all those actually become part of the people management. I mean, you have to do. It's a very important part of your job description. You need to partner with the HR team or people team in your organization, take care of the organization, ensuring the right policies are being built. And they are helpful in the knowledge industry. Sometimes there is this conflict that, okay, a lot of HR folks coming from, say, traditional backgrounds, they will actually put a policy that does not apply to the IT as much. Doing the performance appraisal effectively. And that's also like a kind of a black art. And then participating in tech branding, for example. So all these are the people aspects. So that is one. The second aspect is that now you have a team that you have built and that team is actually well taken care of. Second important thing, and probably this is the most important function of a technology leader, is executing on it, enabling the business of product through that execution. So there is a vision that is set by the founder, by the product team, by the business team that they want to do certain things. Engineering team is the one that will actually make it real. So that execution is super, super important. As you execute, as you build those products, release them, test them, monitor them, there'll be a bunch of things that are spoken, right? So for startups, I think speed matters a lot. How fast can you actually do this? But in addition to speed, quality matters a lot. So whatever you are doing, you have to do it in the right manner. If you don't do that in the right manner, then although you are able to churn out products or code very quickly, it is not helping the customers. So you have to ensure that speed is with quality. Third aspect is often forgotten, and that is where the technology part comes in, is the agility with which your team can actually react to the changes in the requirement or changes in the business and so on. This requires fundamentally a great architecture. That is where all these technology companies need to understand that they are technology companies first. Then only on top of that, you build the business and products. So that is the second part. The first part was the people, the second part is the execution. And the third part of the technology leadership is building a tech roadmap. When I say tech roadmap, so as you get into the cycle of churning out products, building things and so on, and as you scale from say first 100 users, 1,000 users to 10,000 users to a million users to 10 billion and so on, you will accumulate tech debt. And what is tech debt? Tech debt is basically that you have taken a decision in the past, which was good for the past, but not good anymore as you scale further. Or you took a shortcut in the past, but that shortcut needs to be fixed. Basically, at that time, you said, oh, I will fix it tomorrow. But tomorrow has already become yesterday. So you need to go and pay that debt. So proactively designing or redesigning the architecture to ensure that platform is ready for future scalability requirements, that is another responsibility that this team actually has. And when I say tech roadmap, it does not only mean the pieces that were part of the product. It also means infrastructure. It means security. It means the data protection. It means the back end, it means the front end. It means the QA practices or automations and so on. All those things. So those three things, people, execution, and tech roadmap, I think as you become a senior leader, that will be important. One last piece I will say, which is a general requirement as you go into especially the executive management level, is having or developing the right business product mindset. Because what I feel is that unless you actually have a great business product understanding, you cannot even build the right architecture or design, because it has always to be in the context of current requirement or the local context, basically. There are things which are basically a kind of a playbook for scalability. Okay, you should actually have a replica for our database. You should actually use caching to scale your database. You should do many things, horizontal scaling, vertical scaling, and so on. But in the end, great optimization results will actually come from leveraging the knowledge of your business context. I tell often to individual contributors, the architects, that you need to understand and design for the current context. Better you understand the current requirements, more optimization you can actually go and code it. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is great, right? So for those listeners who are in senior engineering leadership, maybe it's like head of engineering, VP of engineering, director of engineering, or even CTO themselves. I think there are a lot of gist here from your experience, from your history. I personally like your what and how framework. So when you're a junior, you're being told what and how. As you go up, you're told nothing. You didn't even know the what, you didn't even know the how, and you have to come up with both. So I think that's really insightful for me. Throughout time, I'm sure in Tokopedia or your journey, you've seen a lot. In Tokopedia in particular, you grew like an engineering from 80 to 2000 plus, I guess, right? That's really a rapid scale. Maybe can you share some of the growing pains or maybe the hiring challenging, like how to scale the team from a small size to a bigger size? Maybe some of the insights you can share here.
Tokopedia team actually grew from 80 to 2000 people now. As you scale, I think you need to work on revamping a lot of the ways you work. For example, your hiring process will need to get revamped. Onboarding process has to be revamped and improve from time to time as your team size increases. And your cultural integration process has to be revamped. Why this is important is because, especially in a hyper growth kind of phase, when you actually hire many people, these people are coming with their own background, their own ways of work, their own cultures, and they can be very different. And when I say culture, culture is basically a shared set of beliefs. Now, how do you integrate them in your culture? Because this is a very important part, often forgotten, that end of the day, unless you actually integrate them in your culture, get them to your values, your teams will be very heterogeneous. They do not have the shared beliefs, and that is a critical requirement for teamwork. So you have to ensure that. A more tactical part is that standardization of the stack. If you do not focus on standardization and do not have some governance in place, you might end up like being there are 20 teams and they are using their own stack. And that is okay. People can actually debate both sides, but I think it's not going to be very beneficial for the team, because I mean, you cannot actually have sharing of the knowledge. You cannot have people moving from one department to another and so on. So a lot of things actually can break. Sometimes it may also happen that there is no governance in place and people are just using different choices, and you have, for example, 5 different kind of queues in the system, 7 different kind of databases, and that becomes operational, I think, disaster. When I say onboarding process, what I mean is that, for example, having a clear documentation of what systems are in place, how we work, a clear onboarding checklist. When an engineer comes or a leader comes, they already know what to do in my first few weeks, how to actually familiarize myself on this company's way of working. Also having bootcamp kind of training. And this was a very useful thing in Tokopedia, for example. I learned there was like a couple of days of bootcamp training for every newcomer that joins. That basically sets them up for, okay, how we work, what is our tech stack, what are our products, who are our customers, what things we are building, and what are our values, our DNA, that's all. As you scale, another thing that I want to point out is that you cannot keep your organization flat forever. When you start small, like 80 engineers, they can all be reporting it to CTO, it's fine. I mean, even that is like too much, but once it becomes like 200, 300 and more, I think you need to actually set an organization structure in place so that better management can actually happen for the team. Those are some of the things that I think is important when growing the organization. On the hiring question, for example, when I'm hiring engineers, I look for engineers who can, I mean, coding is important, right? So definitely they must be able to code. They must know their hard skills. So language is not important, but they must be able to problem solve. So that is one thing that I look for. The second is the attitude. This is a very critical thing. There is always this discussion between will and skill, by the way. So if people do not have a will and do not have a skill, of course, please don't hire them. But if they have a skill and they don't have a will, then you can hire them. But because they have a skill, they do not have will, you'll have to motivate them. You need a leader who can actually motivate them to actually have the will. If somebody has the will, but they don't have skill, it's an easier problem to solve, in my opinion. If they are base level done, they can always be upskilled. You need to train them and so on. And if they have both skill and will, I mean, amazing. You have a rock star there. I recently told my team at Julo what good engineers' qualities are. It may sound a bit rhetoric. I feel that good engineers, I'm not talking about 10x engineer that used to be discussed on Twitter. Yeah. So I'm just saying good engineer. I think they should be pessimists. They have three qualities. So first is being pessimists. They should understand that whatever can go wrong will go wrong someday. They are basically people who believe in writing as rock solid software as possible. So they'll probably go and check every error that is happening because that error is being returned for some reason. You must actually handle it and so on. I give an analogy to my Juro team. For example, good engineers are those engineers who build bridges which can stand there for hundreds and thousands of years. And that is because they have taken care of everything that can go wrong. So they have taken care of, oh, this can go wrong. Let me actually take a backup. Oh, this backup can go wrong. Let me take a backup of backup. The second quality of a good engineer is they are also optimistic. They know that whatever they're building will basically not only see the light of the day, but also grow in number of users that use it. And hence, I need to actually think about the architecture and design very seriously. Third thing is that they are also realistic, like pragmatic. As in, yes, I know that, okay, I want to build a perfect software, but there are all kind of constraints here in the current. So if my users are only 10,000 users, I should not go and try building a system for 10 million users. Yeah, it does not make sense from the economics perspective. So I think good engineers are those people who actually take all these things in consideration.
Wow, really interesting perspective on how you hire engineers. I like the will and skill attributes, and also sometimes like contradictory, right? Good engineer is pessimistic, but also optimistic and also realistic. So it's like a different spectrum altogether.